Howdy, folks. I'm recording this as I'm about to walk out the door. Let's just go ahead and go through this reading guide for section 3, 4, 5, and 6. If a project or policy is favored by a majority of votes, does this mean that it will be productive? Let's go see if we can find that in the text. Literally, the second paragraph here, they say clearly, policies favored by a majority do not always make society better off. Here's the thought experiment. Consider a simple economy with 5 voters. Suppose 3 of those voters favor a project that gives each a net benefit of $2, but imposes a net cost on each of the other 2 voters. In aggregate, the project generates a net cost of $10 against benefits of only 6. It is counterproductive and will make the 5-person society worse off. Nonetheless, if decided by majority vote, it would still pass 3-2. Increasing the number of voters from 5 million to 200 million will not alter the general outcome. As a simple example illustrates, majority voting can clearly lead to adoption of counterproductive projects. Right? Because those in the majority, even though they end up paying more, not getting as much of the benefits, there are those that are getting more benefits, and they're the majority, so they're going to say, oh, sorry, we're just going to exploit those in the minority and be able to get ourselves those benefits. Okay, let's move on to the next question. What is rational ignorance? It explains it beautifully in these 2 paragraphs. Second, there's little incentive for voters to be well informed about either candidates or issues. An individual voter will virtually never decide the outcome of an election. It is more likely that a voter will be struck by lightning on the way to the polling place than it is that their vote will be decisive in a large city, congressional, or statewide election. Recognizing this point, many voters spend little, if any, time and energy studying issues and candidates in order to cast a well-informed vote. Most simply decide on the basis of information acquired as the result of their other activities, watching television, interaction with friends and social media, or discussion at the office. Given these incentives, most voters have little or no idea where candidates stand or what impact government actions, such as agricultural subsidies and trade restrictions, things that we've learned about in this class, have on the economy. Economists refer to this as the rational ignorance effect. That is, voters are poorly informed, but their lack of information is rational because their votes are rarely so decisive. So that last sentence there does a great job of defining rational ignorance. Let's go ahead and go on to number 5 now. What is log rolling? I guess I'll scroll down a little bit to find this one. But it says the power of special interest is further strengthened by log rolling and pork barrel legislation. Right? We talked a whole lot about special interest already in this class, so let's go ahead and talk about log rolling. Log rolling is the practice of trading votes between politicians to get the necessary support to pass desired legislation. We looked at how that happens in our lecture. Pork barrel legislation is the bundling of unrelated projects benefiting many interests into a single bill. Both log rolling and pork barrel legislation often make it possible for counterproductive projects benefiting concentrated interests to gain approval. We've seen this even with COVID, right? As both the House and the Senate have tried to pass COVID relief bills, both parties have been throwing in silly things that are totally unrelated to COVID relief, right? You've seen the Democrats try to push in some abortion stuff. You've also seen on the other side, Republicans try to throw in some stuff about building jets. Neither of those are related to COVID. So let's go ahead and go on. The pork barrel legislation was the next question. That's why I went ahead and read that one there. Okay, so why is the price of sugar so much higher in the United States than other countries around the world? Oh. Did I miss that one? Hold on. We skipped a question. No, we didn't. I skipped a question. I know I have it down here. Here we go. I forgot to highlight it. Sorry, guys. The tendency of unrestrained political process to favor well-organized groups helps explain the presence of so many programs that reduce the size of the economic pie. For example, consider the case of the roughly 20,000 American sugar growers. For many years, the price of sugar paid by American consumers has been 50 to 100% higher than the world sugar price because of the federal government's price support program and highly restrictive quotas limiting the import of sugar. As a result of these programs, sugar growers gained about $1.7 billion, or approximately $85,000 per grower. Most of these benefits are reaped by large growers whose owners have incomes far above the national average. On the other hand, sugar consumers pay between $2.9 billion and $3.5 billion, or approximately $25 per household, in the form of higher sugar prices. As a result, Americans are worse off because their resources are wasted in producing a good we are ill suited to produce, and one that can be obtained at a substantially lower cost through trade. So why is it that these are able to exist? Because of those unrestrained interest groups that are able to get a foothold on politicians and get those quotas, right? Did the framers of the U.S. Constitution seek to limit political power of interest groups? If so, how? Well, let's see. The framers of the Constitution were well aware of the problems arising from the power of special interest groups, the so-called interest groups factions, that's what they called them. The Constitution sought to limit pressure from the factions in Article 1, Section 8, which specifies that Congress is to levy only uniform taxes for programs that promote the general defense and general welfare. The clause was designed to preclude the use of general tax revenue to provide benefits to specific interests, right? General welfare, not specific welfare. However, through the years, court decisions and legislative acts have altered its meaning. Thus, as it currently is interpreted, the Constitution now fails to constrain the political power of well-organized special interest groups, right? Because again, so long as you can, so long as it promotes the general welfare, or courts or legislators say that it promotes general welfare, then something can be, gathered taxes for and be provided, right? It's not whether or not it actually promotes the general welfare, right? This general welfare oftentimes is what we call like a sort of elastic clause, right? Where so long as you can say that it goes for common defense, so long as it goes for general welfare, then it counts, right? If someone can make a very, very good but wrong case that sugar quotas help make all of America better off when it actually makes all of America worse off, then we're going to be able to put that quota in place, right? Same thing with steel, other tariffs. So, what is a budget deficit? What is the difference between a budget deficit and the national debt? Well, let's go on to the next section here. I think it's literally this, not the first paragraph, but the second paragraph. Hold on. I thought it was the first paragraph. Yeah. I don't know why this got highlighted. I did not highlight this. That's weird. I think something else got highlighted when I highlighted this. This book is very weird sometimes. Anyways, the answer lies in the first paragraph. When a government's spending exceeds its revenues, a budget deficit results, right? So a budget deficit is when your spending exceeds your revenue. That's how much you owe others in that given year, right? That's how much you overspend. You could look at it that way. A deficit is overspending. Governments generally issue interest-earning bonds to finance their budget deficits, right? They borrow from people. These bonds comprise the national debt. An annual budget deficit increases the size of the nation's debt by an amount equal to the deficit. In contrast, when government revenues exceed spending, a budget surplus is present. This allows government to pay off bondholders and thereby reduce the size of the outstanding debt. Basically, the national debt represents the cumulative effect of all the prior budget deficits and surpluses. So debt is how much we owe total. Deficit is just how much have we overspent this year. Okay? What is the short-sightedness effect? Here we go. The political attractiveness of spending financed by borrowing rather than taxation is not surprising. It reflects what economists call the short-sightedness effect. The tendency of elected political officials to favor projects that generate immediate, highly visible benefits at the expense of costs that can be cast into the future and are difficult to identify. Legislators have an incentive to spend money on programs that benefit voters of their district and special interest groups that will help them win re-election. They do not like taxes because taxes impose a visible cost on voters. Debt is an alternative to current taxes. It pushes the visible cost of government into the future. Budget deficits and borrowing allow politicians to supply voters with immediate benefits without imposing higher taxes. Thus, deficits are a natural outgrowth of democratic politics, unrestrained by commitment to balanced budgets. So it's because of the short-sightedness effect, because politicians are encouraged to not increase costs now, they borrow, right? And that pushes the cost in the future onto other people, okay? What will happen if the federal government does not bring its finances under control? There are two great paragraphs that talk about this. Let's go ahead and read them. What will happen if the federal government does not bring its finances under control? As the nation's debt gets larger and larger relative to the size of its economy, there will be repercussions in the credit market. Extending loans to the government of a country with a large ratio of debt to GDP is risky, right? In the same way that if I loan money to somebody that already owes people a lot of money, that's risky, okay? As a result, the highly indebted government will have to pay higher interest rates. In turn, the higher interest costs will make it even more difficult for the government to keep within its budget and keep taxes at reasonable levels. If the debt continues to rise relative to income, investors will become more and more reluctant to buy the bonds issued by the United States Treasury. Eventually, a financial crisis will result, either outright default by the government or financing the debt by money creation and inflation. Right? So either say, oh, sorry, we're not going to pay our debts, which is not going to look good, and that's going to tick some people off. And well, the other thing that economists are afraid of is that the United States, in order to keep up with those interest payments, we would just print the rest of the money. And that wouldn't be good because that would lead to hyperinflation, right? Both of those are sad, sad scenarios. This has occurred in other countries such as Greece that have failed to control government finances. The United States is not immune to the laws of economics. All right, guys, that's all we have. We've answered all three. You have a great day, and I'll see you next time. Bye.